Is unchecked indulgence toward those who have caused pain the seed of a nation's downfall? Human history has been forged in the crucible of power and justice, where every decision and every action has left an indelible mark on our collective destiny. Over the centuries, countless rulers have swung between the recklessness of being ruthless and the temptation of appearing benevolent, risking the creation of fertile ground for disobedience. In this context, it becomes crucial to ask, could excessive tolerance toward those who have sown terror be the path to a community's demise? From a perspective that transcends the boundaries of time, the uncompromising stance of certain philosophers and political strategists emerges as a response to this concern. Historically, stability and order have depended on a delicate balance between strength and compassion. However, when a government leans too far toward the latter, it risks weakening the very foundation upon which the structure of the state rests. The wise, who have devoted their lives to studying the art of governance, have warned that blind mercy, applied without discernment, can become a strategic weakness. It's not that human beings lack sensitivity or that justice should be a cold and calculated concept. Rather, it's about understanding that, at times, forcefulness is necessary to deter those who would take advantage of clemency. Imagining a scenario in which those who have committed evil acts are shielded by state indulgence can lead us to a sense of unease. The legacy of those who, driven by ambition, have chosen destructive paths could, if forgiven without measure, turn the pre-established order into a breeding ground for anarchy. It is therefore argued that leaders must act decisively, even if doing so requires measures that, on the surface, seem harsh or severe. The firm application of justice emerges not as an act of personal vengeance, but as an essential mechanism to uphold respect for authority and ensure collective security. The balance between rigor and mercy is, in truth, one of the most complex tasks a ruler can face. Emotions, an inherent part of our nature, can play a decisive role in political decision-making. Empathy and compassion are virtues that elevate the human condition, but if taken to the extreme, they can dilute the state's ability to protect its citizens. History offers us numerous examples in which a lack of firmness has allowed crime and betrayal to infiltrate the social fabric, destabilizing the system and putting the very core of the community at risk. The story of ancient Rome, for example, teaches us that excessive indulgence can open the door to corruption and the abuse of power. Roman emperors were often faced with the dilemma of being just while also maintaining strict control over dissident forces. Those who chose unchecked clemency ended up undermining their own authority, making both internal and external enemies feel free to act without restraint. This phenomenon, repeated throughout history, has become an unmistakable warning for any leader aspiring to greatness. Perceived weakness not only invites impunity, but also fuels the thirst for power in those ambitious individuals who seek to overturn the established order for their own gain. The notion of measured punishment, applied wisely, stands as a fundamental tool for preserving social cohesion. It's not about turning politics into an endless game of retaliation, but rather about understanding that the fear of punishment can serve as an effective deterrent against behaviors that threaten the integrity of the state. When punishment is delivered justly and proportionally, it sends an unequivocal message. Betrayal and violence will have no place in a society that values peace and order. In this way, authority is reinforced, becoming firmly rooted in the people's perception as a guarantor of the common good. It's crucial to understand that firmness does not have to conflict with justice. In the delicate balance between severity and compassion, there is a middle ground where a ruler can act with determination without falling into tyranny. This pragmatic approach is based on the idea that actions must correspond to the magnitude of the harm caused. Those who have committed serious offenses capable of destabilizing social harmony must face consequences proportional to their actions. A lack of rigor in such cases could not only send a message of weakness, but could also trigger a vicious cycle of disorder and rebellion. It's fascinating to consider that history itself becomes a living classroom for those seeking to understand the complexities of power. The alternation between periods of harsh punishment and excessive indulgence has often shaped the course of empires and republics. The collective memory is enriched by these lessons, and in every account there is a perceived duality that invites reflection. What is more vital for the continuity of a nation, unlimited forgiveness, or the resolve to punish in order to maintain order? The answer is not simple, as both stances are interwoven in a complex dance where history serves as both witness and judge. The pressing need to act with firmness is also justified by human nature. The desire for justice and revenge is deeply rooted in the collective spirit, and any sign of weakness may be interpreted as an invitation to transgress. The wise ruler, aware of these innate impulses, must know how to channel them in ways that benefit the community rather than feed them. The correct application of justice is not merely about punishment, but about sending a clear and forceful message. Those who break the social contract will face consequences that reflect the seriousness of their actions. Imagining the future of a nation where indulgence prevails over justice is to venture into a territory of uncertainty. Within that vision lies the risk that empathy, when taken to its extreme, becomes the perfect tool for anarchy. The imbalance caused by failing to adequately punish those who have inflicted harm holds the potential to trigger a downward spiral, where each act of impunity reinforces the idea that rules can be ignored without consequence. Once this perception takes root in society, it weakens the foundations of authority and paves the way for the rise of weak and disorganized regimes. The key lies in finding the convergence point between strictness and mercy, a line so thin it can only be drawn by those who have mastered the art of power. Navigating this narrow space is no easy task, as the balance shifts depending on multiple variables: culture, traditions, and the specific circumstances of each society. Every decision, every punishment, is a wager on the future of the nation. In this sense, deep reflection on the nature of forgiveness and justice becomes a matter of vital importance, as not only the present depends on it, but also the legacy that will be passed on to future generations. The narrative of politics is filled with episodes where the choice to be lenient has shaped the fate of great civilizations. The example of some leaders who have chosen softness at critical moments shows us how, at times, the desire to appear benevolent turns into a counterproductive strategy. In trying to win the people's favor through clemency, there is a risk of weakening the deterrent message that must prevail in the administration of justice. A punishment that is moderate yet firm becomes a tool that not only resolves immediate conflicts but also prevents future social disasters. History is not kind to those who choose the easy path of excessive indulgence. The long-term consequences become clear when a nation begins to perceive that rules are flexible and that, in certain cases, justice can be a matter of pity or compassion. This perception erodes respect for institutions and opens the floodgates to impunity. In a society where the prevailing idea is that malicious acts can be forgiven without corrective measures, the danger is that each transgression becomes a precedent, undermining the established order and allowing anarchy to seep into the system. One of the most poignant elements of this reflection is the unavoidable connection between the exercise of power and human emotions. Clemency, in its purest form, can be an act of love and compassion toward those who have fallen from grace. However, when extended to acts that threaten collective integrity and safety, its meaning changes, and it ceases to be a virtue, becoming a weakness instead. Leadership, in this context, requires a vision that goes beyond immediate emotional impulses and delves into a deep analysis of medium and long-term consequences. The history of empires reveals that the strength of a ruler lies in their ability to project authority without falling into indiscriminate brutality. The balance between firmness and restraint is established in every action, in every decision that affects the lives of thousands of citizens. In times of crisis, when social cohesion teeters on the edge of collapse, the figure of the leader becomes crucial. They must act decisively, set clear boundaries, and prevent the specter of impunity from becoming a ghost that haunts the collective consciousness. When authority appears weak, the ruler loses the ability to inspire both respect and fear. Confidence in the system breaks down, and in its place arises a climate of uncertainty and distrust that can be exploited by those hungry for power. Minor offenses that were once corrected immediately become recurring violations that, when left unchecked, spiral into chaos. It is in this setting that the fair and timely application of justice becomes the only barrier capable of containing the unstoppable tide of anarchy. At the same time, history teaches us that reciprocity is a powerful force in social life. Acting with firmness not only punishes wrongdoers, but also sends a reassuring message to those who fulfill their duty to follow the rules. Security and order are priceless assets that cannot be compromised by a kindness that, when excessive, turns into permissiveness. The expectation of a strong response to wrongdoing reinforces the public's faith in a system that, despite its challenges, protects the common good. The tension between empathy and the need to preserve order becomes especially relevant in an era where emotions and individual impulses are amplified by the immediacy of communication. Contemporary society, in its constant search for a balance between justice and forgiveness, faces the dilemma of how to respond to acts that, while possibly rooted in complex causes, are ultimately unacceptable for the well-being of the collective. A state's ability to maintain peace and unity depends on its capacity to distinguish between compassion that strengthens human bonds and indulgence that may undermine the social fabric. The analogy of a medieval fortress becomes particularly illustrative when imagining a wall protecting a besieged city. If the defenders of the fortress are too lenient and allow invaders to approach without resistance, the structure that has withstood so many battles becomes an easy target. In the same way, unchecked clemency opens the gates to those who would take advantage of power's apparent weakness. The foundation of a strong community rests on the conviction that, while compassion is an essential human value, its application must always be subordinate to the imperative of preserving stability and justice. As we reflect on these themes, we cannot help but feel a twinge of unease at the possibility that empathy, when excessive, may become the catalyst for disorder. Every decision to forgive without proper measure carries a calculated risk, a detour on the path toward an uncertain future. The uncertainty that arises in that in-between space, between punishing and forgiving, serves as a reminder of the fragility of the structures that enable peaceful coexistence. It is precisely at that threshold where leadership must show its ability to transform compassion into a force that strengthens, without falling into the trap of permissiveness. The account of past times and the wisdom accumulated in political writings become, in this sense, a beacon that illuminates the path forward. It is not about erasing every sign of mercy with a firm hand, but about recognizing that the balance between firmness and compassion is the only viable way to prevent decline. Every judicial act pronounced upon those who have damaged the social fabric stands as an affirmation that justice, in its noblest form, is not merely a means of retribution but a safeguard against permissiveness that can erode even the strongest institutions. In the complexity of political action, where logic and emotion intertwine, it is inevitable to encounter tensions that seem irreconcilable. Even so, it is precisely at that intersection where the greatness of leadership lies. Those who master the art of imposing order without abandoning humanity become a timeless example of virtue and wisdom. A leader who understands that the security of the nation lies in the balance between rigor and mercy becomes a guiding light for society, radiating confidence and establishing a precedent that transcends their term in office. The consequence of allowing mercy to become the guiding principle of state action manifests in the progressive loss of the credibility of power. When wrongdoers see that indulgence prevails over justice, a culture is born in which transgression becomes normalized and dishonest behavior is reinforced. The violation of rules that, in another circumstance, would be harshly punished becomes an everyday occurrence, threatening the integrity of the system itself. Thus, the refusal to act with the necessary determination not only undermines discipline but plants the seed for future rebellions and disorder. At its core, the reflection on mercy directed toward those who have caused suffering becomes a meditation on the nature of power and its limits. The greatness of a nation is not measured solely by its capacity to forgive but by the wisdom with which it distributes forgiveness and justice. The evolution of society and the endurance of power depend on the ability to discern which actions require an unyielding response and which can be met with compassion. This delicate balance is what has allowed entire civilizations to endure over time, having learned that excess in either direction can lead to disaster. In the tapestry of political existence, each decision adds to a chain of consequences that extends beyond the present moment. Indulgence, when exercised without the necessary restraint, becomes the prelude to a future in which justice loses its strength and order dissolves into the ambiguity of inaction. This possibility, echoed strongly in the annals of history, is a painful reminder that a nation's security cannot depend solely on the will to forgive, but must be sustained by the capacity to punish and, above all, to deter. The account of the mistakes made by those who chose excessive mercy becomes a warning for modern times. The lessons drawn from past eras, often marked by violence and conflict, invite a deep introspection on the nature of justice and the role of power in society. A resolute stance toward those who threaten stability becomes a manifestation of the conviction that peace and order are not virtues achieved through mere benevolence, but through the ability to impose inviolable limits. In this way, reflecting on how we treat wrongdoers becomes a meditation on the need to act decisively in critical moments. Every act of leniency, no matter how small it may seem, can have catastrophic consequences if it becomes part of a recurring pattern. History, with its relentless voice, teaches us that authority must be upheld through the firmness of its actions and the certainty that those who threaten the collective well-being will be confronted without hesitation. Only in this way can a society be preserved, one in which justice is the fundamental pillar and where the balance between rigor and compassion emerges as the only viable formula for progress. Ultimately, as we look to the future, it is essential to recognize that a nation's true greatness lies in the wisdom of its decisions. The alternative to unchecked tolerance is not insensitivity, but the ability to discern when mercy turns into a trap for weakness. By acting with the necessary resolve, leadership reaffirms its commitment to the common good, preventing excessive indulgence from becoming the forerunner of chaos. Each just and firm action thus becomes an act of love for the community, a testament to the belief that safety and social cohesion are goods that must be protected at all costs. The crossroads between punishment and forgiveness remains one of the most fascinating and complex dilemmas in political life. As today's leaders face the challenges of an interconnected and ever-changing world, the lesson that limitless leniency can lead to decline remains as relevant as it was in ancient times. This knowledge, deeply rooted in human experience, serves as a reminder that power, in order to be legitimate, must be exercised with the strength of unwavering conviction and the determination to act for the greater good. The wisdom accumulated throughout history offers a clear guideline. Excessive tolerance is not a sign of political virtue, but rather a signal of weakness that can undermine the very foundations of society. In the pursuit of order and justice, a leader must be willing to make difficult decisions and understand that protecting the nation sometimes requires the strict enforcement of measures which, though they may seem harsh, are necessary to prevent a future of disorder. The balance between humanity and relentlessness becomes the supreme art of governance, and the legacy passed down to future generations. To look back and extract lessons that resonate in the present is perhaps the noblest task of those who seek to understand the essence of power. History, with its vivid narrative, invites us to reflect on the duality inherent in the human condition, the need to show compassion and the obligation to ensure order. It is at this intersection where the battle for the soul of a nation is waged, and where every decision, every action, becomes a declaration of the values that uphold coexistence and prosperity. The struggle between leniency and firmness unfolds like an epic that transcends individuals and political systems. It is a battle that touches the most sensitive fibers of existence, stirring deep emotions and prompting the reader to question the true nature of justice. In this realm, mercy is not presented as an absolute virtue, but rather as a double-edged sword that, when misused, can unleash a cascade of devastating consequences. As the gaze settles on the shadows and lights of the past, a landscape unfolds where the courage to punish emerges as an act of love toward the community. The firmness of the ruler, far from being a display of brutality, becomes the safeguard that ensures the preservation of peace. Thus, the balance between strictness and compassion reveals itself as the key to preventing indulgence from becoming the beginning of the end, and to preserving the order that is essential for the development and security of all. The idea that mercy toward wrongdoers leads to decline is rooted in a deep understanding of human psychology and the dynamics of power. It is not a call for gratuitous cruelty, but rather an invitation to recognize that every act of leniency carries an invisible cost, a debt that may be paid with the price of chaos. The system's efficiency is placed at risk when abuse is tolerated, and the long-term vision of a nation is jeopardized by the inability to apply punishment that, in a preventative manner, discourages the spread of harmful behavior. Every step taken along the delicate path of justice becomes a meaningful act, a reflection of the ruler's foresight. Firmness, in this sense, is a beacon that lights the way for those who dare to dream of a future in which safety and well-being are non-negotiable. The determination to punish those who destroy the balance not only reaffirms authority, but also plants the seed of progress by eliminating the chances that indulgence might evolve into a hidden threat. The story that unfolds before us is, in essence, a call to reflect on what true leadership means. It is not enough to promise justice. It must be demonstrated through concrete actions that, while they may seem harsh, protect the integrity of the state. A deep analysis of this duality between mercy and severity leads to the conclusion that the path to a nation's greatness lies in its ability to set boundaries, in the courage to act in the face of disobedience, and in the resolve to turn compassion into a tool that strengthens, not weakens, social order.